The Sonic the Hedgehog games made for portable systems are some of the best ones ever. A lot of retro gamers are quick to pass up the Sonic the Hedgehog games that Sega made exclusively for portable game systems, and they really shouldn't do that because they are some of the best classic Sonic the Hedgehog games ever made. In this video, I'm going to talk about 4 Sonic the Hedgehog games made for portable systems that you're probably not playing. All 4 of these games were developed by companies that had close ties to Sega, and with Sega's close supervision. Each game is designed to take advantage of the portable game system it was developed for. Still, it is really exciting to see other game developers with their own take on classic Sonic the Hedgehog 2D gameplay. Now, on to the games. Sonic the Hedgehog for Sega Game Gear. Sega was right on the money when they rightly anticipated that the original Sonic the Hedgehog game was going to be a hit before the original game was released in June of 1991. They had commissioned an 8-bit version made by game studio Ancient that was released on November of 1991 for both the Sega Master System and the Sega Game Gear, which shared a common technical 8-bit architecture. Ancient was headed by matriarch Tomo Koshiro and her daughter, designer Enyano Koshiro, and her son, composer Yuzo Koshiro. Sonic the Hedgehog for Game Gear and Master System was a first major project, but they would follow it up with Streets of Rage 2, both the 8-bit and 16-bit versions, ActRaiser 2, Streets of Rage 3, Beyond Oasis, and they steadily continued to make games to this very day with Eartheon for Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. Sega and Ancient put their all into this release. This version of Sonic was a big part of convincing 90s kids to invest in the battery-hungry Game Gear platform at the time. The portable gaming market was both created and dominated by the Nintendo Game Boy. Despite it being Ancient's first game, they were able to push the 8-bit Game Gear hardware as far as it could go, with large detailed sprites and fast gameplay that was pure Sonic but portable. The first level is instantly recognizable as Green Hill Zone, but from there, the game takes a total departure from the 16-bit older sibling in both level layout and level themes. The Game Gear's LCD screen was backlit, but it was nowhere near the brightness of modern displays. The colors of the game come across a little garish, but are quite appropriate on original Game Gear hardware. The refresh blur goes a long way towards hiding any imperfections. The only thing that moves faster than Sonic the Hedgehog on Game Gear is the battery life of an original unmodified AA battery-hungry Sega Game Gear. The amount of backgrounds and on-screen enemies was scaled appropriately to the Game Gear's abilities. Likewise, the amount of sudden surprising falls and hidden enemies was reduced due to the reduction of available screen real estate. There still are some surprise deaths when one runs away way too fast, but it has a surprising amount of verticality for a Game Gear game. Even with a technical downgrade, Sonic makes his 8-bit debut on portable hardware with fewer differences than Mario suffered in Super Mario Land for Game Boy. It looks like Sonic, it feels like Sonic, just on Game Gear. By 1991, Yuzo Koshiro was skillful in getting some dope, catchy tunes out of an incredibly limited sound chip resources and a mere pittance of RAM. Green Hill Zone was faithfully recreated, but all the rest of the music in the game stands on its own as catchy and enjoyable Sonic the Hedgehog music. About the only thing that fans complained about was the lack of big loop-de-loops that were all the rage on the Mega Drive/Genesis version of Sonic the Hedgehog, but that's something that would get addressed in later 8-bit games. Sonic the Hedgehog for Game Gear is a testament to the very creative staff at Ancient and Sega. If you ever find yourself wishing that there were more classic Sonic the Hedgehog games to enjoy, I will gladly pull out this cartridge out of my Game Gear and throw it in your general direction. Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure for NeoGeo Pocket Color. The sun had set on the Game Gear by 1999, but Sega took the old adage, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," to heart, and gave their blessing for the development of Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure for the NeoGeo Pocket Color. It was to be both developed and published by SNK for their ill-fated but quite fun portable Game Boy competitor, the NeoGeo Pocket Color. Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure is roughly based on Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for Genesis, but without Tails following Sonic around. It is not a straight port, but the levels are reinterpretations with their own unique layout. SNK was not content to copy Sega's homework with permission, but rather they added their own flair and polish to an already awesome game. There was close supervision by Sonic Team and Yuji Naka, and this Sonic Pocket Adventure is one of the most Sega-flavored gaming experiences that was not technically made by Sega themselves. The development team behind this would later go on to form DIMPS, and you will see their name later on in this very same video multiple times. By 1999, much of the world of video game development had moved on to 3D games. However, there is a unique charm to 2D Sonic the Hedgehog games, and SNK and Sega were smart enough to realize that gamers still wanted more original flavored 2D Sonic, and we still do. This is a surprisingly lush, expansive Sonic game with 9 zones with 2 stages for each zone. There is a battery save feature, and you can use it for some instant hits of portable Sonic the Hedgehog dopamine on the go. The graphical fidelity of the NeoGeo Pocket Color straddles the line between 8-bit and 16-bit aesthetics. The colors are lush and the backgrounds are quite an improvement over Sonic's previous portable outing on the Game Gear. The pixel spacing in between the LCD grid gives a wonderful checkered pattern. There is a good amount of speed and Sonic feels like Sonic. Fast! The music is a lot of the catchy fun tracks from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, but lovingly recreated with an 8-bit demake. It's Sonic goodness, and that's what matters most. Since it was initially conceived as a bite-sized portable Sonic the Hedgehog game, it really shines on any portable retro gaming handheld. Any way that you can play this game is valid and totally worth your time. If you can play it on an original NeoGeo Pocket Color, then the clicky stick and the square screen will deliver in excellent time. It's one of the last games released for the NeoGeo Pocket Color, and it is a true chili dog blue hedgehog loving powered good time. Luckily, it's not as obscenely expensive as other NeoGeo Pocket games. If you do get a NeoGeo Pocket Color, I highly recommend that you get this game alongside with the system, and you will no doubt be the coolest person in any room by rocking some Sonic the Hedgehog on the NeoGeo Pocket Color. Sonic Advance for Game Boy Advance. 24 years ago, on January 31st, 2001, Sega announced that they were no longer making their own game systems, and they would transition to be a third-party developer. It was truly shocking for Sega fans, but they tried to cushion the blow by announcing a new generation of games, this time on other platforms made by Microsoft, Sony, and clutch your pearls, Nintendo. Sega was quite pleased with the prior work of SNK on Sonic Pocket Adventure, so when many of the core team on that game spun out to form their own game development house called DIMPS, Sega made the choice to give them the Sonic game series again to make a 2D Sonic the Hedgehog game for Nintendo's upcoming Game Boy Advance game system. The Game Boy Advance was released in Japan in March 2001, and Sonic Advance was released soon after in December of the same year. This is an entirely new game which is colorful and quick with really well-designed controls, physics, and some new level layout and zone design. It is relatively short, but all the stuff that's in there is darn good. Much like Sonic Pocket Adventure, there is a save game feature and you can replay any of your favorite levels. While Nintendo was content to make a port of Super Mario Bros. 2 for the Game Boy Advance, Sega was able to put together a wholly brand new original Sonic game for the same system. Sega and DIMPS took advantage of the widescreen aspect ratio on the Game Boy Advance, and Sonic Advance is a real nice looker. Non-backlit LCD screens were all the rage in 2001. This game looks a lot better on modern hardware, and if you play this game on a Game Boy Micro or Nintendo Lite DS, it looks perfect. The Game Boy Advance has PCM stereo sound, and the use of samples really kicks up the Sonic the Hedgehog music in quality and excitement. This game sounds just as good as it looks and plays. Sega and DIMPS would go on to make 2 more games on the Game Boy Advance platform. 2001 is around when we started paying attention to the entire concept of retro games. Sonic Advance was a retro game experience on a former cutting-edge hardware right when the entire concept of a new retro game was still fresh. Sonic Advance isn't just the first Sonic game on a Nintendo console, it's a darn good Sonic game. Sonic Rush for the Nintendo DS. Dimps and Sonic Team had worked together on Sonic Pocket Adventure, Sonic Advance 1, 2, and 3, so when Nintendo rolled out the Nintendo DS in November 2004, it no doubt motivated Sega to greenlight a Sonic game to be made by Dimps for the Nintendo DS. Sonic Rush came out a year later in November 2005. Sonic Rush is a real visual treat and used the Nintendo DS's 3D graphics to help create some of the best-looking 2D gameplay. Sega and Dimps stayed true to the classic 2D formula, but utilized 3D to help create fluid animation, flips, and tricks of all sorts. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles look amazing, as well as the brand new character Blaze the Cat. Instead of being drunk with 3D power, they actually used it to make a pretty darn good 2D game. Sonic Rush takes advantage of the dual screen design on the Nintendo DS. There's an incredible sense of fluidity, verticality, and space. There are usually multiple paths through each level, with a quicker path being higher up and a slower, more dangerous path below. Has some new high-energy electric tracks, and the melodies really pile on the emphasis of speed. Sonic Rush is well regarded as one of the best Nintendo DS games ever. It is a wonderful bridge between the 2D and 3D eras of the Sonic the Hedgehog games. It was a bestseller, and rightly so. I would like to give a big thanks and shout out to SKATUNE Network for, in both making their rad Green Hill Zone Sonic the Hedgehog ska cover, they graciously let me include it in this video. Go check out their awesome work right freaking now. Hey, thank you very much for watching this video. It would really help out if you would subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to hit that like button and let YouTube know that you like this video. Thanks for watching. This is 8-Bit Joystick. Stay awesome, play retro.